Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Prosperity Through Multifamily Real Estate Investing podcast. I am your host, back from a very long time away from the hot seat here, Real Estate Cody, and with me, as always, is my dear good friend, Mr. Brian Alfaro, the coffee connoisseur himself, who is not on screen today. Brian, where are you?
I'm hiding from you, Cody.
I know. I miss seeing your pretty face.
I think we see each other too much, so this is probably a nice break for
you. I'm glad I'm here to break it up for you guys.
Yeah, you're much prettier than the both of us, Becca, yeah. So we're glad you're here. So, Brian, man, I feel like we kind of taken a long hiatus here for unintentionally, of course, but it's been a while since we've been sitting in the hot seat here, man. It's good to be back.
Yeah, it's been a couple of weeks. We're working on some exciting big projects, both for the podcast, our brand, investment opportunities. There's no shortage of hard work and opportunity out there if you're looking for it. So I won't say too much, but we've got some good stuff in the works.
Yeah, we sure do. Really excited to get that out there. So everybody be on the lookout for some great announcements coming out from Blue Oak. But, hey, what a better way to be back in the hot seat than our very special guest is with us today, who is in a bit of a paradise compared to where we are in the very hot, humid Texas climate here. So why don't you tell us who we're talking to today?
Absolutely. So today we welcome Becca Hint to the show. Becca brings to the multifamily space a successful career of medical device sales at a leading Fortune 500 company, as well as valuable multifamily experience. Becca strives for the uncommon. She currently lives in a boutique surf and yoga hub in Nosara, Costa Rica. Her life in the tropics is largely supported by passive income from her multifamily real estate investing, which I love to hear. Becca's team is under construction currently on a newer asset. It's a 100-unit Quality Inn Motel in Arizona. They are converting to 65 multifamily units, which I'm excited to talk about. The complexities of a hotel conversion process provide her with well-needed challenges to continue learning and growing in the multifamily industry. Additionally, she has invested in and overseen multiple projects, including a condo renovation conversion project in San Francisco, a multifamily value-add project in Kansas City, and she's an LP on several buildings totaling over 450 units throughout Texas. Becca is inspired to help others live an authentic life of passive income freedom and location independence through real estate investing. She invests in multifamily properties in the U.S. and tries to double her money on new construction projects in Costa Rica's highly sought-after tourist towns. Becca, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Brian and Cody. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It is a pleasure to have you here, Becca. And as we were mentioning before the show, I think we're a little bit jealous you're sitting over there in a nice, beautiful paradise. So tell us a little bit more about, who you are, your background, and where you're at today.
You bet. Well, I'll start with where I'm at today. I'm in Antigua, Guatemala now for probably about the month. And we're here on a family vacation and going to the textile markets and all the beautiful things that Guatemala has to offer. But it's a vacation from our vacation life because we live in, as you said, a kind of boutique and surf and yoga town in Costa Rica. And it's a beautiful place in one of the blue zones of the world. And for any of your listeners that might not know, these blue zones are places where there's the largest concentration of centenarians in the world, where people live to 100 years old and beyond because of their healthy lifestyle. So it's the biome, the food, and it's yoga and surf. And we actually look about 10 years younger just living there for about a year now.
That is awesome. That's really cool. And what's really cool about that is I think you were telling us before the show, like you're able to live that lifestyle by design because of your investing in the passive income portfolio that you developed. So again, tell us a little bit more about that background and kind of how you got to that point.
Yeah, you bet. You bet. Well, that's exactly right. We're here living in Costa Rica, 80% supported on passive income from real estate, much of that multifamily real estate. And my husband and I were medical device reps from the Bay Area. We sold those CT and MRI scanners, those large scanners. Great job, great income. But, it was the farthest thing from passive. So we said, how could we put our income on autopilot? And the pandemic just squeezed things so much in the Bay Area with our children doing homeschooling or Zoom schooling. And I said to my husband one day, hey, have you ever really thought about how much we're paying per day on this house in the Bay Area and how much we could get per day on a rental versus how much we could go live somewhere else, like in a tropical paradise per day, and we could live off that delta. And so the quest began. And it probably took us about 6 months, but we just rolled up our lifestyle and got rid of lots of things, put our kids in an international baccalaureate school in between the jungle and the sea in Costa Rica, and left it all behind in the Bay Area. But a key part of that was, of course, getting the finances together. And that's essentially stitching a bunch of things together on real estate investing.
Boy, Brian, that sounds like a rough life for these kids. I mean, school at the beach. I mean, come on.
No, it's amazing. And I'm reading some good books right now, and this kind of puts things in perspective. Cody, the book Joe Sullivan recommended to us, Do the Impossible, talks about how we have to have the right mindset to realize that we are infinite beings. Like anything is possible. We can do anything we want to. And Becca here said, you know what? I'm setting a goal, and it doesn't matter if it takes me 6 months or a year, but she reflected on where she's at versus, how big the world is and how many opportunities there are and how many places there are. And just because I'm living on, $10,000 a month to pay my bills in San Francisco doesn't mean I can't go live for way less in a much more beautiful place that provides a different type of lifestyle that's arguably better. So I just kudos to you for putting that together and choosing the vehicle, multifamily real estate in general, to help you provide that passive income. It's very inspiring for both me, Cody, I'm sure, and also our listeners.
Oh, thank you, Brian. I appreciate that. And things aren't as hard as you think. Anybody can do this with a good plan and a little bit of time. No growth happens in your comfort zone. So just know that, if you're not a little uncomfortable, you're not growing anyway. So just strive for that discomfort and know there's growth behind those doors.
Love this topic, Brian, right? So timely. Like, you're reading that book. I'm reading another great book, The Miracle Equation by Hal Elrod, very similar topic. And it's so true. You are your own limitations, right? And so you set your own limitations, and we've been conditioned our entire lives to think a certain way, to respond emotionally a certain way. And so when you start changing the way that you think, you start changing your reality, you live in the present and in the future. Your goals are, nothing short of achievable for sure. So now, and speaking of that, you coming from the background that you came from, in medical device sales, we actually share a similarity there. My background is in healthcare as well, as a registered nurse. Typically medical device sales, and I got to imagine in, California, probably a very, relatively decent salary, high paying salary, you probably were doing very, very well for yourself. So the mental shift and the mindset of getting away from such a probably well-established career and moving to the lifestyle that you have now, what was that transition like for you? I'm sure it didn't happen overnight. What was the inspiration behind getting out of that, quote unquote security?
Yeah. Well, it's a mindset shift and flipping the whole thing on its head. I realized there was actually no security behind that, especially in sales jobs. There's really no security there. If you don't perform, you're let go. But that was kind of the objection of the family and friends. And you're leaving this great gig and this secure job. And I said, this isn't secure in any way. In fact, they could have an upsize, downsize, right size, and let me go, and a new boss, and they can fire me or change the product or the territory. In fact, I think it's probably one of the most insecure jobs that one can have. In a sense, it's high paying, yes, good benefits and lots of things, in a territory in Hawaii, and that was nice. But it seems like so much of a better idea to line myself up in a passive income lifestyle. That way, when I stop working, the money still comes in. I need mailbox money. And that was the goal here. So I said, how can we sit on the beach and still have the mailbox money rolling in? We shouldn't be trading our time for money.
Yeah, and I think it's important to know, like with real estate, we talk about it's not always how much you make, it's how much you keep. And in this situation, I'm sure your lifestyle, in this, other country is much different than your lifestyle in San Francisco, especially from an expense standpoint. Your dollar, I would imagine, again, I'm a novice here, correct me if I'm wrong, I imagine your dollar stretches a little bit farther. So you probably don't need to make the same, call it US dollar, that you made in San Fran to live a pretty high quality life in Costa Rica.
Correct. Yeah, your dollar goes much farther here. And then, just the tax ramifications of working a W-2 job. We were in a tax massacre, my husband and I. So it's funny in life, guys, right? Like you end up with a tax problem later on, but you start out when you're just getting out of college and you just make enough money to keep the lights on and feed yourself. And then you get your career going in your 30s and you're like, okay, I got to get myself a place to live. So I did a house hack. And then you get a little later on and you realize, holy cow, we're in we've got a tax problem here. How can we lessen our taxable income? Because we just keep working more, making more, and the government continues to take more. So, the saying is, the more money you make, the more taxes you pay. Well, the more assets you have, the less taxes you pay. And that is what my husband and I flipped on its head to embrace, which made this trip possible.
And that's such a great timely conversation as well, because if you look at what's happening in the market as a whole right now, we're in a very, very volatile market cycle right now, where we have, this massive implication from hyperinflation, quote unquote, 40-year high inflation that's really just decimating everybody's dollars, right? So, and then you talked about the security of being, a high-paying W-2 employee, and it doesn't matter if you're a low-income employee, high-income employee, it doesn't matter. The idea of that being your security or safety net really is a false reality, because if you look at what's happening in this market cycle, where we've seen the equities market take a correction, 20-30%, and let's say that maybe you were getting your retirement and you wanted to retire, your portfolio's down. You're now not, you have to weigh that decision. Is it, do I have to work a few more years to exit, and I only have this one source of income for retirement. And what is it? I think it's the great, I draw a blank, investor. Help me out, guys. Warren Buffett. Oh my goodness. Sorry. The great Warren Buffett, if you only have one source of income, you're going to work till you die.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And that's not a lifestyle that anybody wants to live, and so I think, coming to that reality of, really the safety net is not having a secure paycheck. The safety net is actually building a portfolio of assets that can let you live the lifestyle that you want to live on your own terms. And so again, just great timely topic, especially what we're seeing in the marketplace. So appreciate that.
Yeah.
So you kind of, I like to think I have a little nugget of wisdom here and there, but learned through some hard lessons along the way. Brian would dispute that, but that's okay. So I want to talk about, kind of the evolution of your portfolio. You're in commercial real estate, you're looking at some development projects, you got this really cool hotel conversion project. And I think it just kind of really emphasizes the importance of being very flexible right now in this market cycle. People have been chasing, opportunities and all the things that we've seen in the market, but it's been a tough market over the last couple of years. And then now, with the headwinds we have facing us, a lot of people are scared. Let's be honest. A lot of people are really pencils down, sitting on the sideline, thinking like, "Hey, we're out of business for a little bit." But you're kind of looking at some creative opportunities here. So tell us a little bit more about the projects that you're working on now, and let's dive into that.
You bet. Yeah. And in the comment of you're out of business for a while, I would say, hey, you're in business now. Sellers are finally coming to a little reality check that the market's been very inflated. And interest rates have given people a run for their money. And now's the time to start looking for really good deals.
100%.
Yeah, Brian and I are preaching that same message as well.
Yeah. And I feel in this time with things changing, operations are very key. And my past experience, we struggled a bit with C properties. So I'm a big advocate of things that are a little easier to stabilize are B class assets with a slight value add, or A assets, 8- assets bought from the builder with a good rent bump, still with some meat on the bone. So those are the things I'm really liking in these changing times. Also, something with just like so much meat on the bone, like a hotel conversion, which we can go into that. But just on the finances, for example, on our hotel conversion, we've bought this thing for like, 30 cents on the dollar. So we've got a 70% discount, and things that have just so much value add that you can really utilize in this market. Our hotel conversion, for example, it's a 100-unit Quality Inn Motel in Arizona that we're taking down to 65 units of multifamily. So 31 one-bedrooms, 31 studios, and the remainder 2 bedrooms because they were suites. But deals like this, that you can get these in the hotel apocalypse, so to speak, that you can get for just such the price of a song. Those are another huge value play with these changing times.
Becca, you sound like you work for Blue Oak Capital. Cody,
are you guys hiring?
Yeah, we'd love a representative in your neck of the woods. But Cody,
That's right.
I'm the epitome of a remote worker, though.
You're definitely a remote worker. No, but we've been singing this song now for, it feels like about a year now. And I think people were kind of giving us a weird look early on when we were saying this, but we're looking for the same opportunities. We love value add, but we got to be highly selective about which value add opportunities. They got to have actual meat on the bone, not this creative stuff that people are putting out, but the B class and the A- stuff. It's just better risk adjusted with what's going on in the market cycle. You've got wage inflation, you've got labor shortages on top of that, and then you got material problems as well. Not to mention workforce housing right now is a really tough area to play because those residents are getting hit the hardest by inflation. Typically blue collar workers, often living paycheck to paycheck or with very little savings. So to go into a distressed asset, something that's rough, whether it's D class or C class, more opportunistic value add, it's just a tough area to go in there with a goodwill and try to renovate those units, inject several $1 million, and then try to push the rents $200, $300, $400. Often they just can't absorb that. So we personally see that as very risky. And it sounds like you're singing the same tune, Becca.
Exactly. The average C-class tenant has $400 in the bank. So how are you going to raise the rents $200 when you renovate the unit and put in a dog park and all these things we do? It's just a very difficult play.
It is. And I want to, if we can, let's spend a few minutes on this because, Brian, he's heard me say this over and over. I hate the word conservative in our space right now because it's the most overplayed term that people use. Everything's conservative, right? Well, I would also argue that this term value add is probably similar, right? Because everybody puts the value add label on anything. And then the reality is really, if you look at the appetite and the amount of operators that are now in the space, it's very, very hard to find a true value add opportunity where, okay, something is truly vintage or it hasn't been updated or renovated or it hasn't had common amenities installed in years. It's very, very hard to find that because deals have traded hand over hand so often over the last, call it 10 to 12 years, right? And so like you said, in your example of the hotel conversion, or you're buying an A-class asset, a new delivery that's still in lease up, like that's a true value add play. But you see this often where every deal that comes to your inbox, it's a value add play. And what is it? Oh, we're going to add a pet washing station, or we're going to, well, I mean, really, you're not going to be able to, you're not changing this demographic. You're not changing the location. You're not changing the household median income in a lot of these areas. So, really, and you can't, you can't go and refurbish something that was just refurbished last year.
Right.
So I don't know, it just to your point about, the value add space, I think investors, and particularly passive investors, I really want to speak to passive investors right now. I think passive investors really have to be careful with getting drawn into this idea of value add to create, whatever return metric, because the reality is, and Brian, you did a great job explaining this, right? I mean, the C-class space is getting hit hard right now. That demographic is getting killed right now by inflation, and it's having the hardest time keeping up with the pace of the market. So, that's where we have the highest risk exposure as investors that we all need to be aware of. So.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. And your point on underwriting, everybody says it's conservative underwriting, but that's very subjective. for my business model, I run this through 3 underwriters. We have 3 underwriters on our team. So it passes me, then passes my partner, who's a CPA, and then the rest of our team. And then we determine if it's conservative underwriting, because everybody will tell you that. And then on the value add, the brokers will tell you everything's a value add. You put in a dog park and charge for parking, and then you make another $200 per unit, and it's just simply bogus, a lot of it. So it's imperative to have a team that you really vet these deals. And I can tell you, on the flip side of this, I've been in this business 18 years, guys. I stepped out a little while. I have 2 kids, 18 months apart, so I was taking care of them for a little while. But overall, I've been in this for quite a while, and I've seen the cap rates, go from about 9% in the same markets now down to about 4%. So I was a passive investor in a deal in Texas that really went sideways on me. And it was because I didn't really know how to vet the deal. This was years ago. But it's funny how, business models are often stemmed by your own pains. And but there was some key things to look for that I know now that I didn't know then. And even I was dabbling in the multifamily business. I thought I was, fairly educated, been in several coaching programs, but you really need a good team like yourselves, or the business model that I have, for people to really vet these things. Is it conservative underwriting? Is this value add a real value add? Are they projecting the rent bumps to the highest point in the market? And does your square footage even match those high points of the rent bump? And there's just so many things to this. It's really, for a passive investors, it's imperative to align yourself with good operators and people that will invest side by side with you on these deals and vet them for themselves.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Becca, because I think there's this fear of missing out syndrome in the marketplace right now. Is, everybody wants to jump on the wave, because we've seen opportunities where, people are getting 2x returns plus, in just a matter of 18, 24 months, just depending on what markets you're in. And then people are generating and curating a lot of wealth in commercial real estate over the last, call it, like I said, 5 to 10 years. But that doesn't mean that it didn't come with a degree of risk. And it just so happened to be the timing of the market has, carried those deals. And even though operations may have not been, the sharpest. And to your point, you made this earlier, this is going to be a time where we're going to see who are the good operators, who's really focusing on operations, which is the most important part of my piece. The acquisitions piece it's challenging and it's fun and it's the flashy number, but really it's the execution of the business plan is really where you preserve that wealth. And I know Brian is our asset manager on team. Brian, what are your thoughts?
Absolutely. It's the decade of operations versus operations over, what's the saying that we've heard? Operations over valuation. I can't remember the saying, but you definitely have to be focused on operations if you're gonna really perform during this market cycle, because it's going to be harder to push rents. So in order to justify a lot of the rent bumps, especially in this A and B class product, you have to really be focused on customer service, because people, they want awesome customer service. They want somebody who responds quickly. They want somebody who is going to value their hard-earned money, being a tenant in their property. So operations right now are super key. You got to make sure you're staying on top of things. You can't just trust that the market's going to carry you to the prosperity land. And you just want to make sure you're outlined with people who have good systems and that really value operations over acquisitions, because you can go out there and do, 5, 6, 7, 8 deals a year. But if your deals are falling apart, it doesn't matter how many deals you're doing. You're going to end up developing a bad reputation anyway. You're going to have a lot of headaches to have to deal with. So quality over quantity, focus on operations is the name of the game, I think, going forward.
I couldn't agree more. And for myself and my investors, this multifamily game really starts with the jockey, not the horse. I'm betting on the operators, vetting the operators. And this, that's the imperative part of it, because, you can make the numbers look however they look. It's just you need somebody to really vet these for you, and also you need experienced operators. And even especially on these value adds, like our hotel deal, that's an operator that has been in this business 20 years and does really deep construction, like heavy, bringing condemned buildings up. So the operator also needs to match the business plan. If you're going to do a deep value add, you want a heavy lift operator that has proven exits within that asset class and doing projects like that. You wouldn't want an A-class operator that's just good at systems and automations and, getting everything to look nice and pretty if you're going to do a C-class hotel in a tertiary market. So,
yeah, I don't know if you want Brian and I trying to go do a hotel conversion right now. Probably not our cup of tea, Brian.
No, definitely not.
You got a lot tougher skin than we do, Becca. That's
but you guys are focusing on things I love right now too, and we see eye to eye on that. I feel like the B class right now and the A- class there's a good play in that, and I'm staying away from the C's because I just feel like the bottom's going to fall out of that a bit.
Yeah, we had a good friend of ours, friend of the show here. His name is Bill Ham, and over the last couple of years, you've talked about this K-shaped recovery, where your A and B class assets are going to continue the trend, the positive trend and appreciation that we've seen. But it's really that C class space that's really going to be the one that we're going to start to see a lot of, problems and challenges, a lot of deals, that may be falling into dire circumstances as far as financials, because there's just a lot of risks that come along with that. And when you're paying a premium, on those type of assets, it just puts so much more stress on you, the operator, to really execute. And it makes it very hard to weather those downturns. So that goes back to your point you made earlier about, really vetting the deal, but looking at your sensitivity analysis. I think we talked about this before the show, right? Is, what are the different sensitivity analysis that you could put this deal through and stress test to make sure it has the elasticity to survive. And so that's really key. So talk to us a little bit more. So you love the core assets like we do, the AB space, and then you also have this hotel conversion. What does that look like for you as far as those stress test sensitivities and making that decision to acquire this deep value add project when you're focusing on the A and B space?
We acquired this at the beginning of the pandemic, so the opportunity was great, because these hotels were, it was a hotel apocalypse. They were actually hemorrhaging before and really stressing before, because Airbnb has given them a run for their money. And then with the pandemic, the hotels just collapsed. So it's these small ones like the Days Inn, Quality Inn, the smaller chains that were really struggling. So for that, we were able to get this at a very good price. As I mentioned, 30 cents on the dollar. And then we looked at that market, and this is a tertiary market in Arizona. It's Sierra Vista, Arizona. And there's a military base there. There's a new hospital, and there's a great lack of workforce housing. It targets the lower middle class and the upper lower class. So right at that niche, at that $700 to $1,000 rent range, there's just no housing. And to bring new housing on the market, as we know, when builders build, they build A-class properties. And, so that doesn't fit this demographic. How can you take what's not working and bring new inventory to the market? So that was a real strategic play. We're very pleased with how things are going there. But for anybody, I don't know how much your listeners are interested in the hotel space, but there's it's a really fun space. So there's some things to watch out for on the operator side I could tell you about, should that interest you. But or just on the LP side, it's nice to have a few things in your portfolio, some of these deep value adds, depending on your goals. Are you a cash flow investor? Are you an investor that can wait a little while and sit tight while these deep value add plays finish their cycle, and then the cash flow kicks in. But it's nice to have a few things, larger payouts on the end. So that was essential for our portfolio, to have a mix of things.
I heard.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
I would just finish that. For my time in life right now, though, I'm a cash flow investor to support my life overseas.
Yeah. So I heard 2 points out of that. And Brian, we're going to have to make sure the audio editors here catch on. I wanted to coin this term, hotel apocalypse. So that definitely has to be a clip. that we use on our repurposing here. So that's a really cool term. But the second point I heard you mention really there as you were explaining that is you looked at it on a risk adjusted basis, right? You looked at, okay, what is the degree of execution risk? What is the basis that we're getting the deal at? And does that basis justify the execution risk? And when you're buying something on 30% of the 30 cents on the dollar, man, that's a pretty well risk adjusted basis, considering the opportunities that we're seeing right now in this marketplace. And so I think that's a really good point to reemphasize, is that's really how you have to look at these opportunities, right? No matter A, B, value add, whatever, it's what is the risk adjusted basis the risk level associated with that. Brian, you got any thoughts there?
Yeah. And I think the demand for the product you're curating is, I think, arguably the highlight of the deal. The price is awesome. If the numbers work, the numbers work, even if you got it 70 cents on the dollar.
Yeah.
But what you said about what the product you're providing is arguably more important, in my opinion, because I say this sometimes, we hear that there's a housing problem in America or a housing shortage. I don't know if that's necessarily true. What I think is more true is there's a shortage of affordable housing, affordable quality housing. So creating a new product that's going to be nice and clean and safe for somebody that is in that lower middle class space, that $700 to $1,000 range, that product arguably doesn't exist. I don't care what market you're in. So to go out there and to find these opportunities and curate that product, like I said, even if you get paid 70 or 80 cents on the dollar, you're probably going to find a tremendous amount of value, both financially on the back end, and then also personally knowing that you're on a mission, you're creating something that just doesn't exist for people that really need it. So I think that's a phenomenal opportunity.
Yes. Yeah. And this is a phenomenal opportunity for hotels overall. But you bring up a really good point, Brian. We all hear of the housing crisis. Well, the housing crisis isn't for A-class properties and white collar workers. People will find a place to live. They'll just pay more. The housing crisis is for essentially the working poor. As I mentioned, that lower middle class to upper lower class that don't have a lot of concessions, not voucher housing, not Section 8, none of that. It's just they're struggling to make ends meet, but they don't qualify for very much as far as government assistance. These are not government assistant housing. This is just people struggling in the working poor. And it's a challenge to find new, clean inventory. So the best thing to do there is repurpose what we have. And what we do have is a whole lot of hotels that are vacant. And these deals can be found at a very low price. And the play in these markets are all different. So for example, we know what the play is in the market that I just mentioned, but there's a company called New, I believe it is, and they take these hotels in downtown Austin and provide housing for millennials, and they keep them as studios and do kind of a digital nomad worker space down below where the lobby was. Florida repurposes hotels for senior living. And that's a great play in Florida because people are getting old and getting cold. San Francisco uses these hotels for their homeless situation, which just seems to just never end. But that's a great play for that. And then in your kind of tertiary markets that need housing, like we're doing, there's so many uses for them, and they can be had at a very good price, which is nice. For operators, though, they can be a bit tricky. Just something to know. There's definitely lots of landmines because you need to buy out the franchise with hotels, so you have to pay Quality Inn or Days Inn, or and those franchise buyout costs could be anywhere from $35,000 to $250,000. It's a big expense in hotels. Rezoning. So sometimes you certainly don't want to be in the hotel business. So you have to make sure that that zoning is taken care of. So lots of things to look for.
Yeah, well, it goes back to your point you were making earlier, right? Where just having the expertise on your team to execute, these type of strategies, knowing the ins and outs, those landmines to look for when you're executing on these strategies. But it just sounds like you do. You have a great team around you. It sounds like you really have thought this out, done your due diligence, and you're executing on this as a strategy. So, that's great. And, to your point about this need for affordable housing, Brian, you were talking about this earlier, right? Where if you look at the input cost for development right now, it's almost impossible to really develop affordable housing. So the most cost effective method is what you're doing, right, Becca, is you're going to buy these existing buildings that are vacant, that are ultimately just going to be sitting there deteriorating over time, and picking them up and really refurbishing them and making them a great place and repurposing them in something that could be valuable to the community. And I think that's we're very big on that. Brian and I, we talk about a lot about, not just creating our own wealth and our own financial futures, but this is really about giving value back to the community, providing a safe, affordable house that people can be proud of, that people feel safe in, and that really improves the community overall. So I really commend you for what you're doing and your strategy here. And I'm looking forward to kind of continue to see you expand that out in your portfolio.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for that, Cody. Yeah, and you guys too. We invest for several reasons. Of course, it has to make financial sense for cash flow, but we also invest for social reasons, right? That can we elevate communities by bringing up existing properties and making it clean, safe, and affordable for people. That feels good. We can do that and still make money for our investors while we do that. Also, the environment, we can help with that in the water crisis. I'm from California. My gosh, it's major water wars there, and we can implement low flow toilets and a lot of things to help with our water crisis and bring down those water costs tremendously. And then, as we know, as your investors know too, multifamily it is based on the net operating income. So if we can either raise the rents or lower those expenses, we've all made a good amount of money. And all the while doing good for the water crisis and also improving communities as well. So the social impact. That's why I love this business. I much prefer this over, even storage or industrial space, or I just feel like multifamily housing, you can really make a difference here, and that feels good.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I love that. In fact, let me just wrap this up to where I am, guys. I'm in Guatemala, staying at a place called the Good Hotel. And this is a hotel where 100% of their profits go to building schools and providing safe and free education to Guatemalans. And there's lots of Mayans here that make $1 a day. Can you imagine living on $1 a day?
Wow.
And that's hard agricultural work. And so this hotel is devoted that 100% of its profits go to this cause. And so that's why we stayed here. We could find a nicer hotel, a fancier hotel. This is just fine, perfectly clean, but it feels good to give your money in places where they're helping and still satisfy our need for housing. Here, needing a hotel, and then in the multifamily space, we can invest and still do well for the communities.
Love it.
What a great way to wrap up the show here, Becca. I really, really appreciate you highlighting that, and just appreciate the awareness around just the positive impact that we can have, in our investing and providing that value. So really, really appreciate that. So I hate that we're getting near the end of our time here, but we do have to wrap up. But before we do go, we do have a few more questions for you, and then we'll give you your time back. How about that?
That sounds great. I'm going to the textile market right after this, so keep it quick, boys.
No problem. You got it. Rapid fire. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So Becca, what do you like to do for your continued education to further your own investing?
I am a big fan of mentorships. I've been in several mentorships. I'm currently in one. I was in one many years ago as well. And I'm a voracious reader. Also, meetup groups are pretty helpful as well, just to get an idea of what others are looking at.
Absolutely. So what is your energizer? What is your inspiration that gets you motivated to get up and do what you do every day?
Well, I'm sure this won't surprise you, but living a life of passive income freedom, location independence, and lifestyle by design.
Love it.
If I was to stay in the Bay Area and slog along in my W-2 job, I know exactly what I would be getting now. And even 10 years later, it would be exactly the same as this provides so much more freedom.
You look very happy. I'm just going to tell you that.
Thank you. I actually surf. I surf several times a week, and which I didn't surf before. My husband and I were out there. It's like the geriatric surfers with our 11 and 12-year-old, but we're making it happen.
I love it. Love it. Well, Becca, what advice would you give to the listeners to help them grow their businesses?
I would say, if you're a passive investor, that's an amazing place to start. If I would say align yourself with people like you gentlemen and experienced operators that know what they're doing, that are vetting deals, or align yourself with someone like me that has, been in the school of hard knocks and vet deals for myself for my own passive investing. It's really kind of a ride along with me experience because it's for my own passive investing as well. I would say start there. If you're just getting into this space and wanting to be your own operator and do your own syndications, I would also say start with passive investing. I can't tell you how much I learned on that 149 unit in Texas that just went completely sideways. And just being on the sidelines watching the operator struggle, I learned a lot from that. So it's passive investing is a great place to start for whatever side you want to straddle, whether it be the limited partner side or the active. Just start there and sit back and watch.
That's great advice, Becca. I really appreciate that. All right. Tell the listeners how they can learn more about you and get connected with you.
You bet. Well, for those inspired to travel, I have a little gift for you, and it's called 6 Steps to Put Your Income on Autopilot and Move Overseas. You can find that at hintinvestments.com. That's HINT, investments with an S.com. Or you could reach out to me directly at Becca Hint Investments. You can also find me on LinkedIn. And if you have any questions on passive income investing or just even how we did this and stitched together our life to move overseas, please reach out. I'd love to talk to people and inspire them.
Well, Becca, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show. I want to thank you so much for tuning in and giving us such great insights, and we look forward to staying connected.
Oh, Cody and Brian, thank you so much, you guys. I love your podcast. You really provide so much value to all of us. Thank you for having me. It's been a delight.
It's our pleasure. Thanks, Becca.